Let's start with our sound checks from each of the campuses. Let's begin with the Tempe campus.
We're here? Can you hear us?
Yes. At the West Campus, Eduardo, it looks like you are presiding today.
Yes, Jen is not feeling well today, but we're all here, so.
Okay, thank you for filling in. Eduardo is the president-elect for downtown. Polly.
Do you hear us? Hello?
Okay, and you can see we're here downtown. I'm presiding from downtown for this meeting. Maria, do you want us to go ahead and try the clickers for the attendance, or go right to the quorum?
I think we're going to go ahead and write straight to the quorum. We already tested the clickers earlier, and it was a pure success. So we're hoping that now that it's the real thing, it'll work as well.
Then so please go ahead and show us the quorum calculation question.
We'll do that. It's coming up right now. Can everybody see it?
It's a little broken up for us downtown.
That was my bad. I apologize.
I can read it aloud if that would help.
Yeah, actually, if you can bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and go to the right question.
Okay, the question, for those of you who haven't been able to, no, that put us back at which campus are we?
Yes, that is the correct question to begin the quorum calculation.
Oh, okay. Let's respond to the quorum calculation question then, indicating your campus.
All right, so I'm getting...
But I tried again and it was fine.
All right, so the clickers should be, they look like they're not on. They have like a dark screen, but if you click the actual A, B, or C, or 1, 2, and 3, it should be on presentation mode.
Maria, I think it's coming up as test.
Oh, yes.
I will ask Travis to come assist us then. I see some folks whose response are happening, so I know some are working. Let me go ahead and check individual ones. Give me 1 second. My apologies, everyone. Here at Tempe, here's what we're going to do at Tempe. If you click on menu, and then from the menu, you click your number, which should be number 3, it should register your vote.
That, by the way, is on-site in Tempe.
Thank you for your patience, everyone.
I don't know what she just said.
Thank you for your patience.
we're going to go ahead and close the poll right now. Did everybody have a chance to submit the results? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close right now. So we have 98 responses, and we're going to do the triangulation for the second question.
Okay, thank you.
The second question reads, have you given a report on Senate meeting number 2 to members of your academic unit? A is yes, I have. B is no, I have not. C is I plead the fifth. Cast your response now. Closing the poll. And there's the results, Shirley.
Okay, thank you, Maria. If we ask this question again, I would like to see more in the yes column. It's important that you all report back to the units that have elected you as their representatives to the Senate. We're going to go ahead then and begin the meeting with some informational reports. The first report is by Greg Stone, and I believe Greg's going to be presenting from the Tempe location on the September ABOR meeting. Greg was going to present this at our October meeting and was not able to attend because he was ill.
Okay. The board approved the Enterprise Executive Committee's recommendations for the 2020 legislative agenda. These include proposing legislation that would supersede ABOR and university policies regarding assignment of course credits, lobbying to align state and federal laws regarding retirement, and advising on setting state licensure requirements in a way consistent with professional training programs at the state universities. The board received a presentation on workforce development in Arizona, and 2 key points were emphasized. First was evidence for the argument that investment in higher education has an impact on overall economic development in the state. Such investment is especially critical in expanding higher wage workforce. Also, the importance of the university system's distributed learning centers, given that currently only 3 counties are projected to see job growth through 2030. Quality job growth throughout the state, not just in its urban centers, is vital for maintaining a vibrant economy in Arizona. And then ASU's capital improvement plan was approved. These include the Bateman Physical Sciences building upgrades, the Mill Avenue parking structure, the new pedestrian bridge across University, and renovation of the Herald Examiner building in Los Angeles. It was noted that with the addition of the downtown LA campus, revenue from California is projected to exceed total state legislative revenues. And then finally, the chair of the board thanked the Arizona Faculty's Council for its help clarifying the distinction between freedom of expression and academic freedom in the board's setting of a new policy on freedom of expression. Any questions?
Questions from Tempe?
No questions from Tempe.
Questions from Polly?
No questions from Polly.
Questions from West?
You know, we'd like to know where the policy statement is, clarifying the difference between freedom of expression and academic freedom. Where can we find that?
Okay. I believe it's on the ABOR website. I could provide a link to that for anyone who is interested in the minutes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
All right.
Samine, do you want to call for?
Any questions from downtown? No questions.
Okay. Thank you for that report, Greg. Our next report, informational report, is from Stefan Stanchev, who is our ASU representative to the Pac-12 Academic Leadership Coalition. Just this past week, he and Maria attended their conference, and Stefan is going to give a brief report on that conference. Stefan is reporting from the West Campus.
Good afternoon, everybody. We'll need to move the PowerPoint slides up because this is towards the end.
Stefan, can you repeat that?
We need to move the PowerPoint slides up because this is towards the end. So this is the very end.
Very well, thank you.
Yes.
There you go. Better?
All right, so the Pac-12 AOC met in Boulder, Colorado this past Friday and Saturday, and this is what I think a brief report about what we did there. So please move to the next slide. The mission of the Pac-12 AOC at present is to improve the effectiveness and responsiveness of each member institution's shared governance organization, and where commonalities occur to facilitate cooperation that's jointly beneficial to the participants. Translation, for the moment, we are mostly confined to information sharing and the sharing of best practices regarding policies on which the various academic assemblies are currently working. Next slide, please. I think that a slide that might be of interest is the one that doesn't directly relate to what was said during the conference. This is my own slide and a little bit of anthropological observations based on my participation last year as well as this year. And I think there are a few things that we really need to think about and be self-reflexive when we engage in service. Because it's not what we normally do when we go to a conference, right? We normally go to a research conference, and we all know how to do it. We've been doing it for a long time, starting as graduate students. And sometimes during research meetings, the question, how is your university doing, may arise. But I think that's very important when we transition from such informal settings to more formal settings to turn the page and to approach service with the same level of commitment with which we approach research. And that includes to make well-substantiated claims as opposed to broad statements that may or may not be true. That we speak for the entire assembly. And I think that's for everyone involved in service very important to always remember, are we speaking for the entire assembly, or are we speaking only about our college or our unit? And there is a place and time for all of this. But I think these are some of the boundaries that are not always successfully negotiated. Even when we come prepared, well prepared with some in-depth presentations, do we bring to the table of the Pac-12 institutions issues that are primarily of concern, potential concern to all of them? Or do we bring issues that are really confined to our institution, to our state, and that don't really translate to the others? Finally, and this is in the what linguists sometimes call false friends in languages, there are words that are the same in different languages, but they really mean something different. And so similarly here, sometimes we may hear about challenges that seem to resonate with us, but upon contextualization, it may turn out that there's something very different from what we thought at a glance. So it's very important to be self-reflexive when we approach service And the final point that I want to make is that by the same token, sometimes it happens that we are engaged in a particular form of service for a long time. We are very invested in a particular point of view about a particular policy. But we should not forget that although we may need to focus on a tree, there is a forest, and we should not lose sight of the forest of the big picture. So that said, we can actually move to what was said and done at the conference. So next slide, please. Generally speaking, although the events were mixed over the 2 days, I would personally divide what was done at the conference in 3 sections. Section number 1 would be information sharing, brief informational reports presented by each member institution, or rather those that attended, which did not include UFA or Washington State on this occasion, even though both institutions did attend last year in LA. The University of California system generally does not attend the conference, even though Stanford at present does. Anyway, so Shirley and I prepared the ASU report. We were first, and we offered a broad survey of current Senate topics, and I talked a little bit in detail about our current academic integrity policy, which was developed jointly by the Senate and the Provost Office, and it provoked a great deal of interest by the other member institutions, which cut on our time for other topics. But we also presented very briefly our General Studies initiative, which also provoked considerable interest. This is a very, very short, very superficial summary of what the other member institutions brought to the table. University of Oregon, they had a lot of work to do regarding renegotiation of union contracts, which for us is interesting to hear, but by no means applicable. They're also engaged in general studies reconsideration. They spent quite some time talking about emergency financial aid measures, meant specifically to help students who have experienced emergencies and thereby have been unable to complete their courses, to actually not suffer financial aid consequences, and for international students to not suffer visa status consequences as well. So they spent quite some time. They feel they have a very workable policy on the subject at present. The University of Washington brought a number of issues to the table, but the one that they spent the most time on was their reconsideration of instructional faculty within the university. They're generally transitioning faculty that at ASU have the title of lecturers to faculty with the title of teaching professors, whereas their lecturers will be what at ASU is an instructor. And they're also working on up to 7-year-long contracts for their teaching professors, which of course is state-to-state specific. Stanford University tried very hard and brought 2 issues to the table, which are affordability, number 1, and student conduct, although they were unaffected, or so they argued, they were unaffected by the admission scandal. But nevertheless, they do have some peculiar challenges regarding student conduct. For example, they're not allowed to have proctors during exams. Students are supposed to police themselves, which doesn't work very well. So they have some issues that are peculiar to them. Oregon State, Utah, and USC presented on the second day, on Saturday, and they had a little bit less time. And so what they talked about on the whole was leadership changes at Oregon State and thereof faculty merit raises. Utah focused especially on campus safety, which for them, they argued was the dominant concern over at least 1 year. And we are familiar with some of the national headlines, but they also expressed concern with a lot of side plots that developed in the local media and the relationship between the university and the local community, and also between the university police and a subset of the student population, which is generally distrustful of the police, does not turn to the police for assistance. And so the Utah University Police took a number of measures to try to bridge this gap. And finally, USC focused on misconduct of all kinds, leadership changes, and they were generally very enthusiastic about the involvement of their faculty assembly in the search for new leadership, and also about the perspectives for shared governance under the new leadership. Next slide, please. The second component of the conference included informational reports made by administrators and or faculty members at the UC Boulder. These were not very dissimilar from the kind of in-depth informational reports that we hear at the Senate at the ASU. The provost of UC Boulder spoke about their relations with the regents of Colorado, who made some very specific requests about how civics are to be taught, the University of Colorado system, and especially the Boulder campus. And not only about civics being taught, but exactly what and exactly how is to be taught, which provoked a number of exchanges between the university and the regents. Also, the discussion of faculty and social media, statements of academic freedom, which we have, and we adopted the Chicago statement with minor edits. And the provost concluded his speech with an interesting reference to the Big Ten Coalition and a rhetorical question of whether we may want to develop this alliance into something more like the Big Ten Coalition. Other informational reports include such from the library, from a committee on teaching evaluations that's working on an AAU grant, which is trying to completely reimagine the way we do teaching evaluations, establish a triad, self-study, peer evaluations, student evaluations, and generally transition from a notion that we are R1 universities to a notion that we are R1 but also T1 universities. And we also heard reports about student resiliency, faculty misconduct measures at UC Colorado Boulder, and also their own efforts into reconceptualizing the role of career faculty at the University of Colorado system. Next slide, please. The third component of the conference, and that's one for which Arizona State and Stanford were most enthusiastic to hear about, was, what are we going to do next? And so generally there are two options going forward, which are A, to maintain the status quo with shared information and shared best practices, or B, to move on to a next level and to try to establish some more substantial forms of cooperation, to identify possible synergies in the area of library services, relations between libraries and publishers, maybe with respect to sustainability, maybe with respect to student exchange programs. But again, the conference ended 2 days ago. We put a lot of ideas on the table. It's up to the Pac-12 leadership to distill them into a few. And then Shirley and I will bring this to the attention of the UAC and the Provost Office. So I know this was rather superficial and very brief. It was a long conference, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stefan. Just quickly, let's see if there are questions from any of the campuses. Questions from West.
We don't have any questions here.
Okay, thank you. Questions from Poly.
No questions from Poly.
Thank you. Questions from Tempe.
Yes,
Is that a yes or no?
we have a question. Just a moment. We're getting
Okay.
a microphone.
Hello? Okay. Stefania Tracogna from SOM School of Math. Stefan mentioned that at the Pac-12 you discussed Washington State is looking into the transition for the position of lecturers to teaching professionals. Well, it looks like ASU is going into a completely different direction. So actually my question is more for the provost. I don't know if he's still there. In recent years, the provost has hardly granted any multi-year contract. And I think that has a negative effect on both recruitment and retention of good hires. I've been on many lecturer search committees, and it is a fact that the quality of the applicant pool decreases when we hire on an annual contract. Also, lecturers are more likely to leave if they find a position where they consider more secure. So I just wanted to wonder, I was just wondering what is the rationale behind the ASU choice of granting only annual contracts.
Well,
Can we at least consider a system where lecturers are automatically switched to a multi-year contract if they perform well during the first 3 to 5 years of service?
Want to respond?
That's it.
Thank you for the question. Just so you know, the teaching professors that exist at some other institutions vary also by 1 year and multi-year. They're not all multi-year appointments. And so it's not really the classification that matters. In our case, we have a statutory requirement from the Board of Regents that 15% of our total non-tenure track can be on multi-year appointments. And that's 15% is driven by the total number of tenure track faculty. And I'm not quite sure where we are in that, but we have told units that if they have critical roles that need to be filled and people need to be on multi-year appointments, they need to come forward and make the case. And we would welcome hearing from them in those cases where that's the situation. And indeed, we've done that in many cases where the exact situation you describe, where people need to have an option for a multi-year contract in order to leverage the talent that they're trying to recruit. And could people switch to a multi-year approach? They can after they've been on a 1 or 2 year, 1 year appointment for a year or two. You can, the unit can work through the dean's office with Deb Clark, and there's a process for requesting that and how to manage that, and we're happy to entertain that as well.
Okay, so, well, thank you for your answer. About ABOR, I'm aware of the 50% limit, but I also know that that limit is not binding, and NAU and U of A have requested to go above the limit, and the requests were approved. And about the possibility of switching to multi-year only if there are special circumstances you mentioned. I mean, to me, I talked to my director, to me those circumstances are realistic. I mean, if the lecturer is director or is managing some special program, then yes, they're going to be switched to multi-year. But as I said, there are exceptional circumstances, and I don't think that should be the case. I mean, we have lecturers, our lecturers are vital to the mission, teaching mission of the school. They have all kinds of responsibilities, and I mean, they deserve to have more job security, at least that's my opinion.
Well, I appreciate your opinion, but first of all, only NAU has asked for an exception to the board rule, not U of A. And the goal is to build a stronger, more robust tenure track complement of faculty, which is the reason that policy was put in the first place. And we also have to manage the institution financially. We went through a terrible situation in 2008, 9, 10. And we managed not to lay off any faculty, but we had to have some flexibility in how we managed appointments. And so it's a complex thing. None of us would not like to give more job security to more people, but we have to balance all those kinds of issues relative to the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And we often tell deans that if they can afford to make a multi-year commitment, and this position is important, then they should, and they should contact us to advance that. But it's not one rule for everyone. We're not going to go in that direction.
Okay, thank you. You want to ask for questions here from downtown?
Any questions? No questions from downtown.
Okay, thank you for that report, Stefan. Our third and final informational report is a progress report on our general studies revision, and this is coming from Joan McGregor. She's past president of the Tempe Campus Assembly and a member of the General Studies Task Force since 2017. I want to say at the outset here that Joan's report is a progress report. This is not the time for our big discussion of the general studies revision. We'll have opportunities for that later, but I've asked Joan if she would give a progress report on where things stand at this time with that. So, Joan, thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me. Yeah, so this is just kind of where we are at this point, and I just want to give you a little bit of a history of how we got here. So we want to list the task force members of this task force. You can see here, I was on it, Shirley Rose was on it, Fred Corey was on it, Tana Borman was on it, Mega Burdick was on it, Scott Barkley, Sarah Brownwell, Swadweech, I'm not pronouncing that correctly, and then Daryl Morrell was on it. And so we were all appointed, and we, of course, the Senate made recommendations for who should be part of that task force. But really what we were doing was building on an earlier task force that was in 2013, and maybe some of you were on that group. I'm not sure who's still on the Senate here, but anyway, so that to a large extent we built on their work and looked at the issues that were that they raised and whether or not we really need to make a change in our general studies requirements here at ASU. So one of the things I want to just ask you is, what does the police's Every Breath You Take, The Return of the Jedi, and Ronald Reagan have in common with our general studies requirement? From the 80s, yes. You get a point for that. Yes. Basically, our general studies requirements were come from, and I'm not sure if this is exactly right, but 1983. So, and in that year, yeah, I was thinking about the Police's Every Breath You Take, which is a sort of an interesting song, because I think today we would just say that was you're stalking your girlfriend. But anyway, so the question is, have things changed since then? And do we need new requirements for the 21st century? And I think the previous task force thought we did, and we agreed. It's a big ship, as we all know, to try to move it. And so what we were looking at is starting with the problems of the general studies requirements as they are today. And Fred may know the exact number, but there's something like 6,000 courses in it at this point, which is an amazing array. And of course, many of the courses are great courses. This is no denigration of the courses, right? It's just the approach to how students move through that general studies requirements. And so the idea is that, now students often think about it as a kind of check sheet, as a kind of, things I have to do. And they don't see any relationship to those domains of knowledge, right? And we also talk about kind of awareness areas. And again, that sounds a bit more passive than we think the kinds of skills we think we need for today. So it's really, again, there's nothing wrong with the courses that are in there, but rather, is it requiring that students understand that there's some relationship to these different domains of knowledge? Is there something about the humanities and science that you might need both of those to solve certain kinds of problems? And so that was, a critique that, that we had, and I think, many of us have. The other thing that drove this change was, the Board of Regents' interest in seeing a revision in the requirements. Now, we don't want them driving, the details of how we change our general studies, but they did want to see us, taking a look and making some revisions to our general studies requirements. And so some of the language they have, and you can look on the ABOR site and see some of this is, constructive engagement with complex challenges require today's graduates to develop the ability to integrate knowledge and perspectives across disciplines and cultures in a purpose-driven, creative, and problem-solving manner. Skills-based learning outcomes, oral and written communication, critical thinking, teamwork, intercultural competency, application of ideas to real world situations. So those are some of the things that they talk about. And so in a sense, what we came up with, and again, I really want to emphasize, because I want to make sure that we give credit to the earlier task force work, because we really did build on what they were doing. And I think, they made some very compelling arguments. And so we really felt like we were kind of honoring that work. And so, the general education integrates rapidly changing knowledge and perspectives across multiple disciplines. And here is what we're doing in this new, system is through 4 intellectual habits and skills: inquiry, collaboration, innovation, and engagement. Such habits and skills cultivate learning, persistence, adaptability, and resistance to address society's greatest and most pressing challenges through purpose-driven and creative problem solving. I'm sure some of the English professors in the room will want to say something about that, breaking up that sentence. But anyway, so the idea is that we really do need to kind of look at what are the skills, what are the intellectual habits. I mean, back in the 80s, people really thought there was things you needed to kind of know, right? Like a lot of information. And now, of course, we live in a world in which, we all have on our phone, we can access so much information. But what we do need to teach students is how to evaluate the information they get, how to integrate that information, how to use that information to address social problems. So the model that we came up with is this thematic approach. And these themes, the idea is that we will have multiple themes that are faculty, designed and put together, and that so the students will integrate their knowledge to address that theme. Now, these themes aren't going to be the same as their majors, because that would just duplicate that. But the idea is that the themes would be on top of that, or a beginning for that. And so the themes that the thematic approach, what we've got is kind of these 4 competency areas: inquiry, collaboration, innovation, and engagement. And the way students will move through this is there'll be an introductory course, and then there'll be curated content. The content courses will be courses that are already on the books, but that will be selected because of their relationship to the particular theme, and then a culminating experience where the student has to do something, or groups of students will be doing projects or something like that. We'll still have the kind of current distribution requirement. So this approach is, new and complicated. We're going to pilot one theme next year at West Campus. We recognize there are lots of issues, and we are planning to have a kind of open session to discuss this with faculty and really kind of drill down in more detail than I'm going to do today. But we think it's pretty exciting. We're thinking it could be very exciting and innovative, right? We're supposed to be the most innovative school, so we need to be innovative in terms of what we think the general studies requirements should look like. So. So this is what the theme should do, and that's my report. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joan. As Joan mentioned, I was also on this task force. We've been working on this since 2017, and I'm excited to see things moving forward. We're not going to spend time with question and answer today. But there will be an opportunity in the spring for us to have a more elaborate, open discussion on this. So I'm going to move now to my UAC Chair's report. First item is I've made some appointments to Senate committee memberships, and you'll see those in Appendix A. The Research and Creative Activity Committee and to the Library Liaison Committee. These are committees appointments that were at my discretion or with my discretion and a consultation with someone else. So these, I hope that you will agree with them, that they don't actually require endorsement. I also want to mention that the election for next year's University Senate President-elect well, this year's president-elect, next year's president, is coming up soon, and we'll select the person by December and have them in place by the time the spring semester comes. I had mentioned at an earlier meeting that we are working together with, making attempts to work together with student government and the staff council on some issues that we have in common. And I will mention that the student government has forwarded to us a resolution on removing voting barriers. And I've asked the Student and Faculty Policy Committee to take that up and discuss how that resolution from the student government might have an impact on faculty. So I look forward to what the committee has to say. And the last item on my report is to ask Provost Searle, who's here with us and spoke earlier, to give us an update on efforts to address salary compression and salary inversion. As you know, our Personnel Committee has been working on an RFC related to that for a while now, and Provost Searle has a brief progress report.
Thank you, Shirley. We got a letter from then President Cataldo last year addressed to President Crow, and he referred it to me for action, and it was outlining the Senate's concerns that we may be suffering from pay compression in various ranks. And we actually didn't have much doubt that that was probably true. What we didn't have is any information as to how it was actually working. And so after some struggles with some data, because there's just some complicated things of getting to a census point of when you actually have everything in one file about everybody, that we finally have done an analysis of all the tenure track. We're now starting the analysis of the non-tenure track for the same issues of looking at compression. The deans are starting to deal with some of the compression in the process resulting in a pay raise for January 1st. And we are looking for, quite honestly, a lot of money to try and figure out how to solve some of these other problems in the coming year. And so that's something we're committed to working on, and we're working at it in a consistent way. My office can identify everybody and where they're paid, where they are relative to medians and things like that. The reason it goes to the dean's offices is because we have no performance information in my office. And so the issue is, are people paid lower because that's where they should be? Are they paid higher because that's where they should be? Or are they not paid appropriately because they should be paid higher because of their performance? So trying to get all that sorted out is what we're working on now, so that we actually know what the number is and then try and figure out how to solve it. But I have charged the deans where it's self-evident to start to address that in the January 1st pay raise. So we will continue to do that, and we will continue to report back as we have more information.
Thank you, Provost Searle. Again, I want to note that this is an outcome from the work of the Personnel Committee, and we're eager to see how this moves forward. Thanks very much. We're ready for new business. The new business items, first is CAPC motions. Lily, will you present these?
Thank you, Sherry. Hi, everyone. The following motions and proposals will be taken up at the CAPC meeting this Thursday, November 7th, and then will be brought back to the Senate for vote at the next meeting on December 2nd. So as always, if you have any concerns, questions, suggestions, please get them to me, preferably by this Thursday, so we can make sure to address them at the CAPC meeting. And then certainly let us know before the next Senate meeting so we can make sure that all parties that have an interest can be represented. So here goes the motion. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of Earth and Space Exploration for the establishment of an undergraduate certificate, Water Resources. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Department of English for the establishment of an undergraduate certificate, Writing. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences for the transfer of an undergraduate certificate, aka Academic Organizational Change, Veterans Service and Society from Dean's Office, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, to the College of Integrative Sciences and Arts. Request from the Herberger Institute for Design and Arts, the Design School, for the establishment of a graduate degree, MS in Innovation and Venture Development. Request from the College of Health Solutions for the name change of an undergraduate program from BAS Applied Science Food Service Management to BAS Applied Science Food and Nutrition Entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have feedback on these new curricular proposals, please send it to Lily Wang, the CAPC chair. Next, we'll move to old business, and the first item of old business is the new course proposal consent agenda. This was posted and distributed via email to all Senate members on October 23rd. Does any member want to remove an item from the consent agenda? And I'll poll each of the campuses. Tempe?
No, not from Tempe.
Thank you. West?
None from West.
Thank you. Polly?
No, nothing from Polly.
Thank you.
Nothing from downtown.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing as there are no calls for changes, is there a motion and a second to accept this consent agenda? I can't see if
John has moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Bienenstock
Just a minute, yeah.
to motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Burton, both here at the downtown campus. Thank you.
You could read my name.
All in favor of moving forward with the consent agenda? I think we need to vote on this then.
All right, the poll is now open. Go ahead and select yes, A for yes, B for no, C to abstain. Last minute votes. Closing the poll.
Okay, thank you. This motion passes. Next item of business, of old business, is the CAPC consent agenda. I'll ask Lily to come up and present this from CAPC.
Thank you, Shirley. The following proposals were approved at the last CAPC meeting on October 10th. Request from the IRA Fulton Schools of Engineering, School of Sustainable Engineering and the Built Environment for the name change of a graduate degree from MS in Construction Management to MS in Construction Management and Technology. Request from the W.P. Carey School of Business for the name change of a graduate degree from MS in Information Management to MS in Information Systems Management. Request from the W.P. Carey School of Business, Morrison School of Agribusiness for the disestablishment of an undergraduate degree BS in Business Administration, Financial Services. Request from the College of Health Solutions for the establishment of an undergraduate certificate, Hospice and Palliative Care. Request from the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts, School of Music for the establishment of an undergraduate certificate, Music Entrepreneurship. Request from the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts, School of Music for the establishment of a graduate certificate, Music Entrepreneurship. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of International Letters and Cultures for the establishment of a graduate degree, MA Language Teaching. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of Politics and Global Studies for the establishment of a graduate degree, MA Political Psychology. Request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of International Letters and Cultures for the establishment of an undergraduate certificate, European Studies. Request from the School of Sustainability for the establishment of a graduate certificate, Energy and Sustainability. That's it.
Thank you, Lillian. The CAPC consent agenda has been presented. Does any member want to remove an item from that consent agenda? Tempe?
No one in Tempe.
West?
No, we're good here. Thank you.
Thank you. Polly? I didn't hear a response. Any? I'm sorry, I still didn't.
We're good, Polly.
Polly?
We're good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm just having a little trouble hearing in downtown.
We're good from downtown,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Then, seeing as there are no calls for changes, is there a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda for the CAPC consent agenda?
So moved.
It was moved by Barnes, seconded by Sebron. Let's go to the vote for this.
The poll is open. You may vote now. A for yes, B for no, C to abstain. Closing the poll.
Okay. The motion to approve the consent agenda passes. Thank you, everyone. Next, we come to our committee reports from committee chairs, and we have 3 today. The first committee is the Student and Faculty Policy Committee. The chair for that committee is Johanna Uriri Glover, and she is reporting from downtown. So let's make sure everyone can see you and hear you.
Hello, everyone. Our first meeting was held in September, and it was for the continuing members on the committee. And we met to review the function of the committee and our roles on the committee. And we also reviewed several requests for consultation, and we decided our regular meeting times. Our next meeting was held in October. It consisted of the entire committee, the new members and the continuing committee members, and all were willing and ready to work. We discussed previous RFCs that have already been addressed by our committee and awaiting administrative decisions. We worked on RFC 188, the current academic renewal policy, and we reviewed the current policy to ensure its effectiveness at achieving the desired outcomes to secure and maintain the quality of an ASU degree. We have generated recommendations, and we will be corresponding with the Provost's office who generated the request. As our president stated, we will be working with the undergraduate and graduate student government in addressing their 2019 and 2020 goals and priorities, and we have established where we are establishing an RFC related to voting. And that's my report.
Okay. Thank you. Do you want to take questions? Or?
Oh, do you have any questions?
We can, we'll make the rounds. Any questions for the chair of the Senate Student and Faculty Policy Committee from West?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Polly?
No questions?
Thank you. Any questions from Tempe?
No questions.
Thank you.
No questions from downtown.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Our next committee report is from the University Services and Facilities Committee. Joyce Martin is the chair of that, and I believe Joyce is going to be presenting from Tempe.
Yeah, she's on her way up.
Okay.
Thank you. The University Services and Facilities Committee met for the first time last Wednesday. We now have our full slate of new members, so our next meeting in November will be a bit larger. We'll be with the full committee. During for our first meeting, we marked as completed an open RFC regarding expanding the walk-only zones to 5 p.m. in the Tempe campus. You may have noted that was accomplished. And although we may revisit the issue of walk-only zones with respect to the Poly campus, we also marked as completed the issue of large cars and trucks in the parking structures. Parking and Transit took action to increase the number of compact car-only spaces and mark the complete outline of the parking space with only cars fitting fully in that space allowed to park in these designated spaces. So visions of drivers is not obscured when going around corners in the parking structures. We have 2 new actions that include information gathering on spending on building maintenance versus new buildings and policies around student access to UTO-controlled classroom spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Do you want to take questions?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Questions from West?
No questions here.
Thank you. Any questions from Polly?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions from downtown.
And I think you can see whether there are questions from Tempe.
We have a question from Tempe, yes.
Okay.
Just in regards to the last, this is Jason Scott, Herberger Institute. Just from the last thing you mentioned about students having access to classrooms, is there a specific issue regarding that?
Yeah, thank you. So basically what happened was there was an example where a faculty member had tried to book a particular classroom that was under the control of UTO, and there was simply an administrative error and the wrong date was booked. And the TA and students for that class, when they showed up on the date the professor had asked them to, they were asked to leave the classroom. And the professor tried to get it cleared up with a phone call, and it wasn't able to be cleared up. And so we're looking for a little bit more clarification on policy when there might be some sort of a mistake or something that's just slightly outside of the policy, how those type of things can be resolved in the best way.
Okay, I have, because I'm from the film program, and we have students who are shooting on campus, and they always have to get special permission to shoot in classrooms. So we have a set of policies that are in place there. So I want to be sure that we're just aware if there are changes to that policy, we get them and can communicate them to our students. That's
I
all.
appreciate that. We may want to reach out to you and make sure we're all on the same page on that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your report, Joyce. Our last committee report is from the Library Liaison Committee. Cynthia Bolton is the chair of that committee. And I believe Cynthia will be presenting from Tempe.
She's on her way.
Okay.
We had our first meeting in October. We still need to deal with our open RFC on to review roster requirements for the committee. But we did deal with some topics that from last year that were carried over to this year. This includes the reopening of Hayden. It's going to open completely in January. They're experimenting with small collections, which can be seen in the concourse level. And once it reopens, there will be different purposes for different floors. The second floor is designed to have books, ebooks, and databases open for students. The fourth floor is the standard research collection. They worked with the computer science department on algorithms for designing blocks of call numbers. 70% of the space is allocated by algorithms. The remaining 30% is reserved for faculty to fill. They're also interested in, we talked about open source publishing and textbooks. And the question is, how does ASU develop its own access? Right now, groups involved with open access include the Arizona Center of Renaissance and Medieval Studies. They deal with open access monograph publishing, and the Mary Lou Fulton School of Education. They have an open education initiative, which is designed to pull together what the library is doing and how to be tied to other consortia for licensing and platforms. We also discussed library services for classes. We're interested in whether textbooks that are put on reserve should, whether to expand that. The library has a lot of material that can be used in classes, including open access books and journals, reading lists on Canvas. They can also scan chapters from books. We're going to, in the future, be reviewing the ASASU 2019-2020 goals and priorities as these apply to the library. And one issue is the library's role in the upcoming 2020 election. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Cynthia. Do you want to take questions?
I can. I don't know whether I'll answer them.
Okay. Okay. We can begin. Is there anyone there in Tempe at the microphone with a question?
No one in Tempe.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone from Poly have a question?
No from Poly.
Thank you. Questions from West?
No questions from West.
Thank you.
And no questions from downtown.
Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes all of our business. We now have open forum. This is a time when senators can ask questions, make statements, or present topics of interest to the Senate. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak? It looks like we might have someone at Tempe coming to the microphone.
Yes, we have someone from Tempe.
Hello, my name is Melanie Bertrand, and I'm at Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. I have a question. So I'm wondering what work the university might be doing in terms of equity in the assessment of faculty teaching. So as research shows, faculty of color, and especially women faculty of color, are often rated more harshly in student evaluations. So I'm wondering what steps might be under discussion for alternative forms of evaluation.
Okay, thank you for that. We will take that up as a potential RFC.
Thank you.
It looked like maybe there's a second person there at the microphone.
No, there's no one else in Tempe.
Okay. Any items for open forum at the West Campus?
We have no items at the West Campus.
Thank you, Eduardo. Any items for open forum from the Poly Campus?
Yes, we have one item.
Yes, hello. My name is Jared Vibert. I'm with the ASU Staff Council. Just wanted to make sure that everyone felt welcome and invited. Our employee recognition barbecue for faculty and staff will be on November 20th at 11:30 on the Polytechnic campus. We hope that you'll be able to join us.
Thank you for that invitation. Downtown.
Any open forum questions? No, nothing from downtown. Thank you.
Okay. Then thank you, everyone. It looks as though our business is concluded. And oh, wait, it looks like we have a second person at the mic.
Phil Vandermeer, Emeritus College. Salary compression and inversion has been an issue that the Senate has dealt with off and on for about 15 years, not terribly effectively for a variety of reasons. And I'm encouraged to see that the provost is looking into this. I guess I would like to encourage the UAC to be involved in the discussions and the creation of policy rather than simply waiting to hear what the provost decides. Faculty input on this is really essential.
Thank you. If there's nothing more, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
It's been, we have a motion to adjourn. You hear a second to that? Second? I think we can go ahead with that vote. This meeting is adjourned.